everybody. This is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today, we're going to be looking at Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Robert Louis Stevenson's classic book of mystery and horror, adapted by John K. Snyder III. I'm sad that we haven't seen much of John K. Snyder III lately, but throughout the 80s, he did a bunch of stuff for Eclipse. It seems like mostly for Eclipse, but a lot of independent publishers. He did a run on Grendel, various and sundry things, and he always had this very unique style. And as you can see by this cover, this is an example of his kind of expressionistic style. This is part of the Classics Illustrated series that First Publishing put out in association with Berkeley Books. We have looked at a couple of them already, and we will continue to look at more of these because I have a bunch of them, because there's a lot of good ones. They're very thin. They're little, tiny little prestige format comics, and but they got really good artists to work on these. So let's crack it open up. Beautiful title page. So one of the main things about this, I like John K. Snyder's art just fine. I think it's a very interesting style, but his coloring in this is like basically the star. This is some beautiful coloring. It's fully painted. It's amazing. As you can see by this title page, just amazing. I would want a poster of this. Every Classics Illustrated had a nice little introduction about the history of the book you're about to read, or the adaptation. Always very informative, and we start off with the story of the door. Now, I've never read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I probably read the Marvel Classic Comics version when I was a boy, and I think they gussied it up. But the story is very slow moving. It is like a mystery, where there's just little pieces of evidence aggregate, and it's just there's really not a lot of action. There's not a lot of scenes where it's like, Mr. Hyde's killing 10 guys. You know what I mean? He's a monster, but we don't see much of his monsterism on display. So this guy's pretty much the main character in the book, Mr. Utterson, who's a friend of Dr. Jekyll, who we'll meet shortly. He's hanging around with his friend, Mr. Enfield. Mr. Enfield says, hey, we're in this little back alley. Have you ever taken notice of this door? I have an interesting story involving this door. Look at this hat. It's just so geometric. I mean, that's how John K. Snyder draws. It's very expressionistic, very geometric. Almost like some of the scenes look like something from like a German expressionist film, like Cabin of Dr. Caligari and stuff. And so the story he tells Utterson is that one night he saw a little girl running in the streets late at night, and this monstrous man, like a juggernaut, came out of nowhere and kind of trampled her. So Enfield ran after him and tackled him, because it's a brutish thing he did. Luckily, the girl wasn't even that hurt. She was more just frightened. But the family came out, and this guy, who we find out is Mr. Hyde, said, listen, I will make restitution. I do not want a scene, so I'll give you 100 pounds sterling. And he kind of has to, because everyone's going to kick his ass, I guess, if he doesn't. And he gives them a check. He goes in the door, signs a check, or finds a check, but it's signed by Dr. Henry Jekyll, who Enfield knows. So he's like, yeah, Dr. Henry Jekyll's a man of good character. I guess we can trust this check. And everything's on the up and up. They cash the check. So it's just this curious tale. Why Dr. Henry Jekyll, who's an upstanding pillar of society, would be associated with this bestial man. Now, I like how the chapters all have their own little title. So here's Search for Mr. Hyde. So Utterson kind of becomes obsessed with thinking about this Mr. Hyde person. He goes to visit another mutual friend of all of them, Dr. Lanyon. Dr. Lanyon seems to have some beef with Hyde. They don't agree on scientific principles, but for the most part, they're friendly. And Lanyon tells Utterson he's never heard of Mr. Hyde. He doesn't know who he's talking about. So we see Utterson trying to sleep that night, and he's haunted by these images of Hyde. Look at this beautiful coloring here. This is it's not a dream sequence because he's half asleep. Just kind of almost like a waking nightmare. So Utterson is so obsessed, he starts haunting that door that Enfield pointed out to him, waiting for Hyde to show up. And finally, he's rewarded. Hyde shows up. He asks Hyde to see, he says, "Can I see your face?" And he says, I would just like to know the man who I'm dealing with. And Hyde gives him his address. And it's the number of a street on Soho. And he says, "How did you know about me?" And Utterson says, we have common friends. Dr. Jekyll, for instance. He says, "You lie. Dr. Jekyll never told you." And of course, you know the story. There's a reason why he knows he's lying, because he knows that Dr. Jekyll never told him. Slams the door in his face. So then it turns out Jekyll's house is right around the corner. So it's pretty obvious that, that's just another entrance or exit from the house in this back alley. He talks to the butler, and apparently it's stranger than he thought. Apparently this Mr. Hyde has full access to Dr. Jekyll's house. His staff, his butler and such, have orders to obey Mr. Hyde. So now the mystery is just getting very confounding. He's like, why is Dr. Jekyll this nice guy? Whatever, almost like a great friend and protector of this horrible person. So he wants to get to the bottom of it. So one night there, Utterson is talking to Jekyll, and he asks him about this whole Hyde thing. He asks him about Lanyon too. And Jekyll just says, "I do not wish to talk about this. This is a matter we will drop." And Jekyll's being very evasive. As he leaves, we see a weird smile on Dr. Jekyll's face. Now we have the Carew murder case. A year later, see what I was saying about Cabinet of Dr. Caligari? I like how that house almost looks like an evil face, or like Brack from Space Ghost Coast to Coast. A year later, a maid was looking out her window and she saw Mr. Hyde kill this guy, Dr. Carew? Mr. Carew. And he just beat him to death with a cane right in the street. Once again, guys, look at these colors. He's very expressive with the colors too. Whenever there's violence, everything turns red. Look at this example here. As the maid is watching the murder. Even the art becomes more expressive in scenes of violence or shock. He really plays it up, just it's almost like in a soundtrack. This would be like when the horns go, and freak out, So the woman calls the police, and they find a card on Carew's person. Or maybe it was dropped by Mr. Hyde. He also dropped the cane that he used to murder him with. The card is the address of Mr. John Utterson. So they go to Utterson's house. He goes to identify the body. Once again, another mutual friend. They all seem to know each other, these kind of upper middle class guys. And he recognizes that's the cane I gave to Jekyll years ago. Of course, the mystery deepens. So now he says, he tells the police, "I can take you to Hyde's house." He gave me his address. They go. This is his maid. That face is just horrifying. She says, "I haven't seen him in 2 months. He's not here. He hasn't been here in 2 months." And of course, the mystery deepens. Mr. Hyde is very hard to find. He has no family, a traceable family, never been photographed. because he only came into existence a year ago. Incident of the letter. Now Utterson goes to visit Jekyll again. Jekyll is in a very different disposition. It looks like he's seen a ghost. And Utterson goes to talk to him about this whole Carew business. And he says, "Are you hiding this Hyde fellow? Are you mad enough to do that?" And he says, "Trust me, I am well done with that man. You do not know him like I do, but trust me, he's far away from here, and I will never see him again." He tells him, he says, "Tonight I have received a letter from Hyde. I don't know if I should show it to the police." And of course, it implicates Dr. Jekyll, so he's worried. He's worried about his reputation being associated with Hyde. His art is just so, weird and simple some ways. It's like Lego people. He's just very odd. And Jekyll says, "Oh, what a lesson I've had." He really seems devastated by something, but Utterson doesn't know what it is. He asks Poole, the butler. He says, "Oh, by the way, have you received any messages tonight?" And he says, "No, none, sir." So Jekyll said that Hyde delivered the letter was delivered from Hyde that evening. So once again, the mystery deepens. He goes to visit this guy, Mr. Guest. I'm sorry, Utterson does. Utterson goes to visit this guy who's a handwriting expert, shows him one of the letters written by Dr. Jekyll and one of the ones written by Mr. Hyde. And even though Mr. Hyde draws in this almost spastic scrawl, he's an expert, and he says there's actually a lot of similarities in the way these guys write. If you look closely. Another clue. God, guys, I just can't get over these colors. It's so great. So, basically the investigation or the search for Hyde continues for quite a while. It seems like he just left a path of devastation. People pointing out their injuries. "Yeah, you gave me a black eye." All silently. I love this. "Hey, you gouged out my eye. I have to wear an eye patch now." These women who he obviously abused. And then all of a sudden, Dr. Jekyll comes back into society. And he seems like his old self. Full of bonhomie, hanging out with his friends, going out to dinner. And he seems like he's doing great. But then one night he gets a note from Lanyon, Dr. Lanyon. And, I'm sorry, he just goes to see him. And Dr. Lanyon looks like he's dying. He's like, "What happened?" And he says, "I wish to see no more of Dr. Henry Jekyll." But he also won't really tell him why. He's like, "I don't even want to talk about this. Please talk of something else." This novel is so infused with this Victorian sense of, "Oh, we should not talk of this as it's improper." Like so much of this book, the mystery would have been cleared up in the first 5 pages, but everyone's all like, nobody wants to talk about anything that's unseemly. So then, and right around the same time, Dr. Jekyll goes back to being a recluse. He writes a letter to Utterson, says, "You're a dear friend, but I probably won't ever see you again. This is just the path I've chosen," alluding to some darkness in his soul or something, some problem with him. Just saying, this is just the way it's got to be. It's not because I don't like you. I must be alone. So he gets a letter to be only opened at Dr. Jekyll's at his disappearance. Now, also, Dr. Jekyll has made up a will. I'm sorry, I did mention Utterson is Dr. Jekyll's lawyer. That's how he's so intimate with him. The will states that everything goes to Mr. Hyde if he disappears or he dies. Of course, he's terrified, as for his friend's safety, that, of course, Mr. Hyde, being such a bastard, will probably want to kill Henry Jekyll to get the fortune. He's a pretty rich guy, Dr. Jekyll. Now we see incident at the window. And Enfield and Utterson, the two friends from the beginning, first chapter, they go to visit Dr. Jekyll. And he's just comes to the window. And he doesn't look very good. But he is like nice, and he's like, oh, my good friends, it's so nice to see you. I wish I could invite you up. And then we see this. He's chatting with them. And he's like, oh, yes, let's chat for a while. And then all of a sudden, he's like, and he slams the window. And Enfield and Utterson aren't even quite sure what they saw. Because I think they would be like, our friend just turned into a monster. This is beyond. Look at this great panel where the city turns into Dr. Jekyll's face. The last night. So here's where things come to a head. So Poole, Jekyll's butler, he knocks on Utterson's door one night, says, please, you must come. Something terrible has happened. They go up to Dr. Jekyll's room, and when they knock on the door, Hyde's voice answers. And Poole knows that it's a totally different voice. He says, that is not my master's voice. I am convinced. The last time I heard my master, he cried out 8 days ago. He cried out to God. I think he was killed. That guy killed him, Mr. Hyde. Utterson says, why would the murderer stick around for 8 days? It just doesn't make sense. And Poole recounts to him how, I guess the common way he would send orders to Poole, which seems kind of dickish, he would just scrawl notes and throw them onto the stairway and let them float down. And Poole would find these notes. And the past few weeks, they've been more and more frequently just asking him to get a certain kind of chemical or salt for his experiments. Then when he gets them, another note saying, return these. These are not the right ones. Tell them we need a more pure example. These aren't pure enough. And I really like this, how he, there's a note here from Dr. Jekyll to the pharmacist. And at the bottom, look at this. We know he's turned into Mr. Hyde, and he just writes in this like savage, childish scrawl. For God's sake, find me some of the old. Because this is very erudite and well written. And then that's just like, rah. So finally Utterson says, fuck this. He gets an axe, chops down the door. And look at this as it gets red here. And look at this, just like, it almost looks like stained glass window art. And this, I love this. And he finds Mr. Hyde dead on the floor. Oh man, what a panel. That's crazy. That's like it's somebody stuck electricity in this panel. It's so electrifying. And then they look around. There's no evidence of Dr. Jekyll. They're like, where's his body? What the hell's going on? And they find a note from Dr. Jekyll. And it says, my dear Utterson, if you found this note, it's probably too late for me. Yada, yada, that kind of thing. And he says, please read the account of Dr. Lanyon, which I guess is there, accompanying it. I guess I was wrong about the red always being for violence, because the violence is done, and this is in red. Still looks great, though. So here's Dr. Lanyon's narrative. And it's in his words. And guess basically one night, he got a message from Poole, the butler. He said, you must help. You must go to Dr. Jekyll's house, go into his room, and bring a whole drawer of chemicals. A certain drawer. And my associate will come to pick it up, I guess. So he's at his door. He's got a gun. He suspects, he's scared. He's like, what the hell is going on here? And Mr. Hyde shows up. And he's like, have you got it? Have you got it? Oh, man, look at this. This reminds me of an old, like, underground comics character. I can't remember who, though. Just so weird looking. And basically he says, I'm going to show you something now, which will shake your foundations. So he sees the chemicals in the drawer. He mixes up a few of them. Look at these crazy colors here. And he drinks it right in front of Lanyon. Oh, I love these panels right here. Once again, like expressionism in overdrive. Just like totally loud art. It's just like, look at me. Very energetic. So this Mr. Hyde, takes the medicine, the formula, and he transforms. God, I love these panels. That's so interesting and fun. It's almost like great psychedelia or something. And then Lanyon sees Dr. Jekyll. He's transformed into Dr. Jekyll before his eyes. And he basically told him the whole story for the next hour. And Dr. Lanyon says just his soul was so sickened. His life was so shaken to its roots by hearing this tale and seeing this that he basically, like, the shock is killing him. He knows he's going to die soon. He's like, my days are numbered. I'm just like, I don't want to live in this world anymore. So now we finally get to see Dr. Jekyll's full statement of the case. Finally, we get his point of view, even though he's the namesake of the book. He was born very wealthy. He had a wonderful life. But like most men, probably all men, he indulged in the other side. He was always fascinated by this duality. For the most part, he was a great doctor, furthering the knowledge of science and medicine, also helping people. But he also did other things at night that were not so good. And he realized that probably most guys are like this. So fascinated by this duality, he decided to see if he could make a formula to split the two. And he experimented on himself. I guess the one thing he needed, the last ingredient was the special salt he got. And so now that it was ready, he just said, fuck it, I'm going to try it. I could die, but who cares? Very painful transformation, but when he transforms, he feels younger, lighter, happier in body. A solution of the bonds of obligation, an unknown but an innocent freedom of the soul. Basically, he shed off all of his ethics and morality. So there, it feels like freedom, like, yeah, there's no rules. This is great. And so now, basically, this is the interesting part of the book where, when I was a kid, it was like, oh, there's a good guy and he becomes evil. But what this part we realize is that Dr. Jekyll was always had an evil side. He just liked the fact that this formula could let it out, come out and play. Could be a totally different person that he wouldn't have to deal with the repercussions of, the guilt, the bad feelings the next day. So he split his good and evil into two. But he could still at least, I think he vaguely at least could have the memory of like having a great time, even though if he couldn't remember what Mr. Hyde did. But it was freeing and liberating. So he kind of likes it. He's just like, this is great. So he sets up this whole second life for Mr. Hyde. That's why he has his own house. Eventually, after that incident with the little girl, he even gave him his own bank account, so there'd be no more connections. And see, this is how Robert Louis Stevens describes it. Jekyll stood aghast before the acts of Hyde, but the situation was apart from ordinary laws, and thus it was Hyde alone that was guilty. Jekyll was no worse. And even sometimes he would try to undo the evil that Hyde did, and thus his conscience slumbered. There's a great array of panels here. That's some fun stuff. Basically showing Hyde just indulging in every vice and debauchery. Hyde is basically just an incredible, bacchanalian, sensualist, evil guy. And then A couple months before that, Carew died. He woke up in bed. Henry Jekyll woke up in his own bed as Mr. Hyde. Without taking the formula, he turned into Hyde. He was horrified. He was like, oh my God. And he's like, I'm going to have to pick one persona. I could be Hyde forever, but then I'd have no friends. I'd be probably pursued by the law. Or I could stay repressed and not able to whet my appetites ever. But I'd have a nice, respectable life. He picks Henry Jekyll. He picks the safe way. Well, the good way, too. So he stops taking the formula. And these were the 2 months when he was back to normal, hanging out with his friends. And it looked like he had overcome his curse. But then one night he gave in. Just the urge to give in to all of his urges, the things he wants to do. He got the best of him. Just like a drug addict, he was just like, I just got to do it one more time. And that's the night, because he was caged for so long, he came out roaring, he says. That's the night he killed Carew, because he was caged up for so long. He was extra, evil that night. And this devastates Jekyll. It's like he realizes this is horrible. And so he wants to, he's never going to do it again, he vows. But now the transformations keep coming without anything by his doing. Hyde just pops up when he's sitting in the park one day. And that's when he sent the letter to Lanyon to get that drawer of chemicals. Because he couldn't go into Jekyll's house. Mr. Hyde is wanted all throughout the city. Oh man, these are so beautiful, these full-page spreads. And he realizes that he's not even afraid of dying anymore. He's terrified of becoming Hyde again. He had basically, now to turn back into Jekyll, he had to take like twice the dose. It was getting harder and harder to be Jekyll. Of course, Hyde hated Jekyll himself. Almost like how the Hulk hates Bruce Banner, He's just hates him for being such a goody two-shoes. And so, nearing the end of his letter, he's desperately trying to stay human. And I guess those salts that we talked about, the final ingredient, it's not like he's ever going to find them again. It turns out that first batch, those were impure. They had some unknown ingredient. That's the only reason the formula worked. And now, unfortunately, he can't get any salt like that. No one has it because it was just a fluke. So he can't make the formula again. So he's running out of his formula to change back and forth. And he finishes the letter with, "Here then I bring the life of that unhappy Dr. Jekyll to an end." Because he knows that the only way to get rid of Hyde is to kill himself. And Utterson puts on his coat and walks out the door and remembers when he saw him in the room. So, I guess he transformed into Hyde, but it was too late. He killed himself, and thusly he killed Hyde as well. And we just have this interesting last panel. Oh man, that's some beautiful shit. They also have a great biography of the authors in these Classics Illustrated. Very, very informative, very inclusive of a lot of their whole bibliography. And a little tiny one about John K. Snyder. I guess he wasn't as accomplished as Robert Louis Stevenson. Some ads, and that's it for Classics Illustrated. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by John K. Snyder. Hope you guys like looking at this. I know the art's kind of weird, so I have a feeling, this is the kind of artist you either love or hate, or just think, eh. But like I said, it's more about the colors for me. These colors are just luscious. But I do like his art, especially when he freaks out and the expressionist type panels in here. I think it's really fun stuff. And I have one more by him, but I'm not going to look at it for a while. There's other artists to look at. But I have his Secret Agent, which, I don't know, in a year or two maybe I'll look at that if I'm still alive. So hope you guys like looking at this today with me. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.